We talk about parts of the brain and functions in the previous video. To understand all brain structures and functions clearly, we need to get familiar with the terms of the brain. Research suggests human brain contains approximately 86 billion neurons and up to 1 quadrillion, 1,000 trillion connections, or synapses. Mentioning the approximate number is just to understand how complex brain is. To understand brain structure and function clearly, we have to know the neurons and synapses. A neuron consists of three main parts: a cell body, soma, dendrites, and an axon. The cell body contains the nucleus and organelles. The dendrites are branch-like structures that receive signals, and the axon is a long projection that sends signals to other cells. Neurons communicate using electrical and chemical signals across a synapse, a gap between the axon terminal of one neuron and the dendrite of another. What is dendrites? These tree-like branches receive information from other neurons at junctions called synapses. A synapse is the junction where a neuron sends a signal to another cell, allowing brain cells to communicate. Presynaptic terminal, the end of the sending neuron's axon, which contains neurotransmitters. When an electrical signal arrives, it triggers the release of these chemical messengers. Synaptic cleft, the small gap between the presynaptic and postsynaptic terminals. Neurotransmitters diffuse across this space to reach the next cell. Postsynaptic terminal, the part of the receiving neuron, often a dendrite, that has specialized receptors for neurotransmitters. Neurotransmitters, chemical messengers, like dopamine or serotonin, that are released from the presynaptic terminal and bind to receptors on the postsynaptic terminal, causing a response in the receiving neuron. Axon terminal, also known as synaptic terminals or boutons, are bulb-shaped structures at the ends of axons that transmit information between neurons. They contain neurotransmitters, which are released to cross the synaptic cleft and bind to receptors on the receiving neuron. This process is called synaptic transmission. Myelin sheath. Myelin is an insulating, fatty and protein-rich substance that forms a sheath around the axons of nerve cells in the brain and spinal cord, which helps electrical impulses travel quickly and efficiently. This rapid transmission of signals is crucial for brain function and is essential for processes like learning, memory, and coordinated movement. What is gray matter? Gray matter is primarily composed of neuronal cell bodies, dendrites, and unmyelinated axons. It also contains glial cells, such as astrocytes, which provide support and nutrients to neurons, and capillaries. The high concentration of neuronal cell bodies gives gray matter its characteristic grayish hue. Its function is to process information, controls voluntary movement, and is the site of cognition, perception, emotion, and memory. Primarily forms the outer layer of the brain, which is cerebral cortex. Cerebrum and cerebral cortex is two different terms. The cerebrum is the largest part of the brain. It's what we visualize when you think of brains in general. The outermost layer of the cerebrum is the cerebral cortex, also called the gray matter of the brain. It is also found in deep nuclei within the brain. In the spinal cord, in contrast to the brain's arrangement, the gray matter is located in the inner core, forming a butterfly or H shape. It is also found in clusters of neurons deep within the brain's white matter, referred to as nuclei. As cerebral cortex is the outermost layer of brain, its surface has many folds, giving it a wrinkled appearance. The folds consist of many deep grooves called sulci and raised areas called gyri. These folds add to the surface area of cerebral cortex, allowing large amounts of information to be processed by more nerve cells. Cerebral cortex makes up about half of your brain's total mass. Cerebral cortex is divided into 4 lobes: frontal, parietal, temporal, and occipital. Each of these lobes is responsible for processing different types of information. Collectively, cerebral cortex is responsible for the higher-level processes of the human brain, including language, memory, reasoning, thought, learning, decision-making, emotion, intelligence, and personality. It's primarily location outer layer of cerebrum and cerebellum. It looks like pinkish-gray, white matter. Primarily consists of myelinated axons, which are the long extensions of neurons that transmit signals between different areas of the brain and between the brain and the rest of the body. It is like the brain's wiring. Its main function is signal transmission. White matter is located beneath the gray matter cortex in the brain, forming connections between brain regions. In the spinal cord, it is on the outside surrounding the inner gray matter. White matter looks like white, due to myelin. Tracts are made up of axons of neurons, sometimes tracts also called fibers. Clue to remember: the axon is long like a truck. Those tracts or fibers connect different areas of the central nervous system, forming a complex network that allows communication and information processing. There are three major types of fibers or tracts in the brain. Commissural fibers. These tracts cross the midline of the brain to connect corresponding areas in the left and right cerebral hemispheres. The corpus callosum is the largest example of this type. Association fibers. These fibers connect different parts of the same cerebral hemisphere. They can be short, connecting adjacent gyri, or long, connecting more distant areas. Projection fibers. These fibers connect the cerebral cortex to the brainstem and spinal cord, carrying motor and sensory information. The corticospinal tract is a crucial projection tract involved in motor function. Clue to remember: projection of light. These tracts are composed of myelinated axons, which give them a white appearance. Other general vocabulary we need to know to understand brain is nucleus, gray area in the CNS where neuron cell body found. Gray matter is the tissue that contains a high concentration of neuron cell bodies. Ganglia, singular ganglion areas in the peripheral nervous system where neuron cell bodies found. Those act as relay points between the central nervous system, CNS, and the rest of the body. Tracts, bundle of axons in the central nervous system. Clue to remember: axon is long shape like truck. Nerve bundle of axons in the peripheral nervous system. Gyri, singular, gyrus. The raised folded ridges on the surface of the cerebral cortex. Sulci, singular, sulcus. The grooves or furrows that separate the gyri. Deeper sulci are also called fissures. The choroid plexus is a network of blood vessels and cells located in the brain's ventricles that produces and secretes most of the cerebrospinal fluid, CSF. The choroid plexus originates from 4 different locations. 2 lateral plexuses. These are located in the 2 lateral ventricles. Third ventricle plexus. This is a single plexus found in the third ventricle. Fourth ventricle plexus. This is a single plexus in the fourth ventricle, located more caudally. These 4 origins are the sites where the tissue that produces cerebrospinal fluid, CSF, is formed, and from which the 4 choroid plexuses grow. The choroid plexus is made of modified ependymal cells that form a specialized single layer of cuboidal epithelium. These cells are continuous with the ependymal lining of the brain's ventricles and are responsible for producing cerebrospinal fluid, CSF. The choroid plexus's primary function is to produce and secrete CSF, which protects and nourishes the brain. The unique structure of the choroid plexus, particularly the fenestrated capillaries and the epithelial cells, allows it to perform this vital role. Ependymal cells have cilia that beat in a coordinated and unidirectional manner, creating currents that move the CSF through the ventricular system of the brain and spinal cord. The cell's specific orientation, known as planar cell polarity, is what ensures the consistent direction of this flow. Let's recall what is ependymal cell. Ependymal cells are a type of glial cell that line the ventricles of the brain and the central canal of the spinal cord, forming a single-layered epithelium. What is glial cell or neuroglia? What are glial cells and their functions? Neurons are the information processing cells of the brain that transmit electrical and chemical signals, while neuroglia are supporting cells that provide structure, nutrients, insulation, and immune defense for neurons. Both astrocytes and ependymal cells are types of glial cells, which are the support cells of the nervous system. Astrocytes are a star-shaped type of glial cell in the central nervous system, CNS, that provide structural support, form the blood-brain barrier, and regulate the environment around neurons. Ependymal cells are another type of glial cell that line the ventricles of the brain and produce cerebrospinal fluid. Astrocytes are essential for the blood-brain barrier, BBB, by forming structural support with their end feet that wrap around blood vessels, stimulating endothelial cells to create tight junctions that block harmful substances, and regulating the passage of molecules. They also perform metabolic functions by controlling the flow of nutrients, waste, and ions like potassium, and they can release factors that promote or increase the BBB's permeability. Its main functions include producing CSF to cushion and protect the brain, providing nutrients, and removing waste. It also forms the blood-CSF barrier, which helps regulate the passage of substances between the blood and the brain. Ventricles of the brain. The ventricles are a series of interconnected cavities within the brain that produce and circulate cerebrospinal fluid, CSF. Their primary functions are to protect the brain by providing a cushion, support brain homeostasis through nutrient delivery and waste removal, and provide buoyancy that lessens the brain's weight. 2 lateral ventricles. These are the largest ventricles, located one in each cerebral hemisphere. They are connected to the third ventricle through the interventricular foramen of Monro. Third ventricle. A single ventricle located in the midline of the brain, between the two halves of the diencephalon. It is connected to the lateral ventricles and the fourth ventricle. Fourth ventricle. This ventricle is situated between the cerebellum and the brainstem. It connects to the third ventricle via the cerebral aqueduct of Sylvius. The fourth ventricle is the final chamber in the series, with openings that allow CSF to exit the ventricular system and flow into the central canal of the spinal cord and the subarachnoid space. Cerebrospinal fluid, CSF, flows from the lateral ventricles through the interventricular foramina into the third ventricle, then through the cerebral aqueduct into the fourth ventricle. From the fourth ventricle, it exits into the subarachnoid space through the median aperture and lateral apertures. The body produces about 400 to 600 milliliter of cerebrospinal fluid, CSF, per day, and it is absorbed at a rate that replaces the entire volume, which is about 150 milliliter at any given time, 3 to 4 times a day. The continuous production and absorption maintain a stable volume of CSF to cushion and protect the brain and spinal cord. What is the arbor vitae? The arbor vitae is the Latin term for tree of life, and refers to the branched, tree-like structure of white matter found deep within the cerebellum. It is composed of nerve fiber bundles that transmit sensory and motor information to and from the cerebellum, playing a critical role in coordinating movement and balance. In a cross-section, the arbor vitae's white matter tracts have a branching, tree-like or fern-like pattern, which is what gives it its name. In the body, its primary function is to aid in motor control and coordination by sending signals between the cerebellum and the rest of the body. This is some of the terms of the brain you must know to understand brain function. Then you will be so amazed how our brain works and functions. Stay tuned for next videos about functions of all regions of the brain.